is unlike him, right? So, all right, I open the door to Duane's dressing room, and that's when I see Duane and having anal Will.
Let me process that for a second.
There was a couch, and Will was bent over on the couch, and Duane was standing up, killing him. Like,
tell us what it's like being in a marriage, a Hollywood marriage for 21 years and being successful.
We don't know. I kept my separation a big secret from my family, from my mom, from everybody. Only 2 people knew.
I'm really worried because Duane and Tisha have like a real violent relationship.
And Duane's hi, honey.
Hey, y'all about to get her beat with a bag of oranges.
You scared that she gonna tell all those freakers about you and Wayne, huh? Dwayne Martin. That's what you're scared of. Go ahead and let it come out, Will. Just tell her, yeah, that's why Tisha left on Wayne. Come on, Will. Just put it out there, bro. Everybody know. Anybody from LA know you and Duane are an idol. Stop letting her extort you for that little secret. You may not know or think people know, but we all know though.
In January 2016, Tisha Campbell and Dwayne Martin filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. They declared $15 million in debt, no significant assets, nothing left. And on the surface, it looked like the sad but familiar story of 2 actors who had spent big during the good years and couldn't sustain it when the work slowed down. Hollywood is full of those stories. Nobody looks too hard at them. But a federal bankruptcy trustee looked hard at this one. And what she found, buried inside financial records, private emails, shell company filings, and court subpoenas, wasn't just fraud. It was a 20-year architecture of deception. A carefully constructed lie that required one woman to sacrifice her body, her finances, her career, and her sanity to maintain it. That woman was Tisha Campbell. And the lie she was protecting, the one that cost her everything, led investigators directly to one of the most famous men on Earth. Today we are going to go through this story from the very beginning. The career that made Tisha Campbell a household name, the trauma that made her vulnerable, the marriage that became a trap, the bankruptcy that cracked it open, the court documents that named Will Smith, the sworn testimony that described what was really happening behind those closed doors, and the unverified allegations, clearly labeled throughout, that a growing number of people believe explain why the whole thing was constructed in the first place. Every piece of this video is labeled court record, sworn testimony, verified reporting, unverified allegation. You will always know exactly which category you are in, because this story is complicated enough without adding confusion about what's proven and what isn't. Let's start at the beginning. Most people who know Tisha Campbell know her from Martin, the show that ran from 1992 to 1997 on Fox. She played Gina, the sharp, beautiful love interest of Martin Lawrence's character. And she was magnetic on that show. Funny, grounded, real in a way that connected with audiences immediately. But Tisha Campbell was not a product of Martin. She had been working in this industry since she was a child. We're talking Little Shop of Horrors on Broadway as a teenager, Spike Lee's School Days in 1988, House Party in 1990, which became a cultural landmark. By the time Martin came around, Tisha was already a seasoned performer who had put in years of real work to build a career in one of the most difficult industries on earth. She was also a survivor in ways the public didn't fully understand at the time. Because here is the part of Tisha Campbell's story that tends to get glossed over in favor of the drama that came later. During the final season of Martin, the show that made her a star, she filed a lawsuit against her co-star Martin Lawrence. The allegations in that lawsuit were serious. She described a pattern of behavior on set that she said had made her working environment intolerable, and that escalated to the point where she felt she had no choice but to leave. The details of that lawsuit were known in the industry. What happened next is also known, and it tells you everything about how Hollywood treats women who speak up. Tisha Campbell was labeled difficult. Not Martin Lawrence, Tisha. The woman who filed the complaint was the one whose motives got questioned, whose character got attacked. whose future in the industry suddenly became uncertain. This was 1996. The Me Too movement was more than 2 decades away. The industry had absolutely no infrastructure and no desire to handle a situation like this in any way that protected the woman involved. So Tisha Campbell went from being one of the most beloved Black actresses on television to being a liability, almost overnight. Think about what that does to a person psychologically. You do everything right, you work hard for years, you build something real, and then the moment you stand up for yourself, the moment you refuse to be treated as less than, the machine turns on you and calls you the problem. That is the state Tisha Campbell was in when Dwayne Martin stepped into her life. Dwayne Martin was, by all public accounts, a solid, good-looking, reliable presence in Black Hollywood at the time. He was building a reputation as a dependable actor. He was connected. He was charming. And when he and Tisha got together in the mid-1990s, people genuinely rooted for them. They married in 1996 in a lavish ceremony. And for a woman who had just been publicly humiliated and professionally undermined, this marriage was more than a romantic commitment. It was a lifeline. It was proof that she was okay, that she had survived, that the Martin Lawrence chapter hadn't won. What Tisha has said in her own words is that she needed the marriage to work, not just because she loved Dwayne, but because the marriage itself had become the evidence of her survival. If it failed, it felt like confirmation that everything the industry had said about her was true. That psychological dynamic, that desperate need for the marriage to be okay, is almost certainly what allowed her to endure what came next. Because according to her sworn court testimony, the abuse began not years into the marriage. It began almost immediately. It was a foundational element of what she had walked into. And here is the thing about abusive relationships that people on the outside often don't understand. They don't look like horror movies from the outside. They look like red carpets and sitcom smiles and magazine features about Black love done right. That is exactly what Tisha and Dwayne's marriage looked like from the outside for over 2 decades. To understand why Tisha's silence was so total for so long, you have to understand what Dwayne Martin's position in Hollywood actually was. Because it wasn't just about his own career. Dwayne Martin was central to a circle called Real Husbands of Hollywood, a comedy series that was a parody of reality television, but that also reflected genuine relationships within Black Hollywood's male social elite. He was connected. He knew people. He moved in rooms that a lot of people wanted access to. And at the center of his web of influence was his friendship with Will Smith. By the early 2000s, Will Smith was arguably the biggest movie star on the planet. Full stop. Not one of the biggest. The biggest. His association with Dwayne Martin was not casual. These were not men who ran into each other at industry events and exchanged pleasantries. They were photographed together repeatedly at events, premieres, and on vacations. They socialized as a unit. Their families were intertwined. For Tisha, this proximity to Will Smith's world came with real benefits: career opportunities, social approval, access to circles that most people in Hollywood spend their entire careers trying to reach. But it also came with a cost that she has only recently begun to speak about publicly. Because as the wife of Will Smith's closest friend, Tisha Campbell became something specific in this ecosystem. She became the gatekeeper, the person whose job it was, implicitly, never stated out loud, to make everything look normal, to deflect questions, to validate the friendship, to be the visible, stable, traditional Black wife who made the whole picture make sense. If anyone ever asked questions about the nature of Will and Dwayne's relationship, the vacations, the closeness, the Bentley, the financial entanglement, Tisha was supposed to be the answer. Look at us. We're fine. This is just friendship. This is just what it looks like when Black men support each other in Hollywood. She played that role for 20 years. Now we need to be clear about what is documented and what is not, because this is where the story gets complicated and where precision matters. In 2011, Will Smith and Dwayne Martin took a trip to Trinidad together without their wives. Multiple reports from that period noted the trip and described the nature of the friendship in terms that raised eyebrows. Guests at Dwayne Martin's 35th birthday party reported that Will Smith gifted him a Bentley. That level of gift, between two married men, generated significant commentary at the time. In 2012, Star magazine published a report claiming Will and Jada were on the verge of divorce, with an insider claiming Will had taken Dwayne on an exotic vacation and an eyewitness account of what was described as a romantic dinner. At the time, this was dismissed as tabloid gossip. Will and Jada were America's golden couple. The story faded. In a 2013 interview, when asked about her marriage and Will's personal freedom, Jada Pinkett Smith said, "I've always told Will you can do whatever you want as long as you can look at yourself in the mirror and be okay. Will is his own man. He has to decide who he wants to be, and that's not for me to do for him." On the surface, that reads as a progressive, trusting wife speaking about her husband's autonomy. In the context of the rumors that were circulating at the time, rumors that had been building for years, a lot of people heard something else. And Tisha Campbell, during all of this, was on the front lines. When questions surfaced, she was the one publicly defending, tweeting about how the media needed to stop attacking the Smiths, calling them an amazing couple, telling people to leave them alone. She was doing exactly what her position required her to do. Now, the Unverified. An individual named Brother Bilal, who has claimed publicly to have worked as a personal assistant in Will Smith's inner circle, gave an interview in which he alleged that he walked in on Will Smith and Dwayne Martin in a sexual situation. He described the encounter in explicit detail. He identified Dwayne Martin as the dominant party. This is an unverified claim from a single source. It has not been corroborated. Will Smith has not directly addressed it. We present it here as an allegation only, made publicly by a named individual, and nothing more. What we can say without qualification is this. When Brother Bilal's claims emerged publicly in 2023, Tisha Campbell did not rush to deny them. She did not defend Dwayne. She did not defend Will Smith. A woman who had spent 11 years publicly and aggressively protecting that friendship chose this time to say nothing. After 20 years of being the loudest voice in the room when questions came up, silence. You decide what that means.
And then I saw sexual acts that I walked in on.
Who'd you walk in on?
Him and Dwayne Martin. Hollywood is the hurry up and wait game. So I'm running all over the studio. He's not in his dressing room. I go to the cafeteria. I'm like, well, but I see his car there. So I open the door to Dwayne's dressing room, and that's when I see Dwayne and having anal sex with Will. There was a couch, and Will was bent over on the couch, and Dwayne was standing up.
In January 2019, Tisha Campbell filed for a restraining order against Dwayne Martin. The affidavit she submitted was sworn under penalty of perjury. These were not statements made to a journalist or a podcast host. These were statements made to a court, with full legal accountability attached. And what she described in that affidavit was devastating. She stated clearly that the abuse was not a recent development triggered by the divorce proceedings. It was foundational. It had been present from the beginning of the marriage and had continued throughout its entirety. Specific incidents she described in the sworn affidavit include Duane grabbing her by the arm in an attempt to force her into a bedroom, being pinned against a wall by her throat until she had difficulty breathing, and a pattern of psychological abuse, specifically relentless body shaming and appearance attacks, that she described as systematic, not occasional criticism, a sustained, deliberate effort to erode her self-worth, to make her feel unlovable, to make her feel that despite everything she was enduring, she was lucky to still be in this marriage.
I felt myself hurl myself into a corner and ball up. And I think I blacked out because the next thing I remember was the pain, and I was back in my body, if that makes sense. And I remember limping out of the room and being really, really, really quiet.
Tisha has also stated publicly, outside of the court proceedings, that she kept the abuse completely hidden from her mother, from her friends, from virtually everyone. She has said that only 2 people knew about her separation when it happened. Think about that for a moment. A woman living through what she described as a horror story, keeping it so secret that her own mother didn't know. That level of concealment doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from a calculated understanding of what exposure would cost. Not just to her, to everyone connected to the image she was protecting. In an industry where positive representations of Black marriage were already rare and precious, exposing Dwayne Martin meant something beyond just ending a marriage. Tisha has spoken about how it felt like a betrayal of something bigger, like feeding into narratives she didn't want to feed into. Duane, according to her account, allegedly understood that dynamic and used it against her. As long as she believed protecting him was protecting something communal and important, she would stay silent. And the silence enabled everything else. The financial manipulation, the hidden assets, the shell companies, the scheme that would eventually bring a federal trustee to their door. Let's go through the financial fraud in detail, because this is where the story moves from personal tragedy to federal crime, and where Will Smith's name enters the court record. January 2016. Chapter 7 filing. $15 million in declared debt. The federal bankruptcy trustee assigned to the case was doing her job, which is to examine the debtor's financial position, find any assets available to creditors, and ensure the bankruptcy process isn't being manipulated. Standard procedure. What she found was not standard. The centerpiece was the Chatsworth Mansion, a 9,000 square foot home purchased in 2006. When the housing market crashed, the property's value dropped below the outstanding mortgage. At this point, Dwayne Martin negotiated a short sale with the lender, a process where the bank agrees to sell the property for less than what's owed, accepting the loss and releasing the debtor from the remaining mortgage obligation. The buyer in the short sale was Rock LLC. The trustee's investigation alleged that Rock LLC was not an independent third-party investor. It was a shell company controlled by Dwayne Martin himself. By running this transaction, Duane allegedly wiped out a significant portion of his mortgage debt, while secretly maintaining ownership and control of the property through the LLC. To give the arrangement the appearance of legitimacy, he signed a lease with Rock LLC, paying $5,000 a month in rent to a company he allegedly controlled, while simultaneously listing the property for sale at $2.6 million. The plan, as the trustee laid it out, was to sell the home, satisfy the nominal debt held by Rock LLC, and pocket approximately $1.3 million, hidden from bankruptcy creditors, hidden from the court, hidden from Tisha. Now, where did the funding for this operation come from? A man who had just declared bankruptcy and claimed no significant assets did not have the capital to construct and maintain this kind of scheme on his own. The trustee subpoenaed financial records and personal emails to trace the money. What the subpoena produced, and what is reflected in the court documents, is that in 2012, Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith extended a loan of $1.4 million to Dwayne Martin. The emails subpoenaed in the proceeding allegedly showed Dwayne Martin applying pressure on Will Smith to provide the financing. The exact nature of that pressure, what leverage, if any, was being applied, is not specified in the public record. But the dynamic the emails allegedly reflect is one where Dwayne Martin felt positioned to make demands of Will Smith that went well beyond what a normal friendship would support. Either Dwayne felt entitled to Will Smith's financial resources in a way that had no ordinary explanation, or Will Smith felt an obligation to Dwayne Martin that also had no ordinary explanation. A $1.4 million loan, routed through a bankruptcy proceeding, subpoenaed by a federal trustee, in the court record. That is not a rumor, that is a document. Here is the moment that changed everything. As the trustee's investigation tightened around the Rock LLC scheme, Tisha Campbell discovered the full scope of what Duane had been doing and who had been funding it. She confronted him. She asked him to come clean, to cooperate with the trustee, to stop the deception. He refused. He wanted her silence one more time, the same silence she had given him for 20 years. protect the image, cover for the scheme, stay quiet. And for the first time, Tisha Campbell said no. She went to the federal trustee. She became the whistleblower against her own husband, turning over evidence that exposed the full shell company operation and led investigators to the $1.4 million loan from Will Smith. Think about what that decision cost her. 20 years of protecting this man. 20 years of enduring what she described as physical and psychological abuse. 20 years of defending his friendships and maintaining images that weren't hers to maintain. And the moment she finally stops, the moment she finally tells the truth, she is doing it under the threat of federal fraud exposure if she doesn't. That is not a heroic moment born of sudden courage. That is a woman who was backed into the last possible corner and made the only choice left. When the divorce was finalized in 2020, Tisha Campbell had $21 to her name.
Because you went through a divorce, and if I read correctly, they said you had $7 left to your name. Is that true?
That's true. Actually, no. The story was I had $21 in my pocket and a knife cost $7, and I wanted to pay for the knife, but it was Christmas, and I had a choice to try to get some extra toys for my kids.
20 years, $15 million in declared debt, $21. That is the price of protecting someone else's secrets. One of the things that makes the Tisha Campbell story more than just a personal tragedy is the evidence that what happened inside her marriage was not isolated behavior. There is a documented pattern. Actress Ray Dwayne Martin. Her husband at the time was a prominent political figure, the Prime Minister of Turks and Caicos. She considered Duane a close friend. She made the introduction in good faith, for business purposes and genuine relationship building. What followed, according to Ray, was Dwayne Martin allegedly insinuating himself into her marriage in ways that were anything but friendly. He began facilitating her husband's infidelities, introducing him to other women, creating arrangements, building a network of connections that required secrecy and loyalty to maintain. What are you doing and why are you doing it? I made it very clear that we were not friends anymore and that he was not welcome in my home anymore. One of the specific allegations in that interview involved Nicole Murphy, Eddie Murphy's ex-wife, and a relationship allegedly facilitated by Duane between Nicole and Lisa Ray's husband. Now step back and look at what this describes. Dwayne Martin allegedly positioned himself across multiple relationships as a connector, a fixer, a man who created and managed arrangements that required absolute silence from everyone involved. That is a very specific skill set. It requires people to trust you completely. It requires you to have something on everyone, or to have created a mutual dependency so deep that exposure hurts all parties equally. If he was building this kind of ecosystem around other people's marriages, what do you think he was doing inside his own? And if the unverified allegations about the nature of his relationship with Will Smith are even partially true, then Tisha Campbell was not just protecting a marriage. She was the central pillar of a much larger structure. Remove her silence and the whole thing collapses, which is exactly what eventually happened. The divorce was finalized in 2020. And while Tisha Campbell has been careful, understandably careful, about what she says publicly and explicitly, her actions since the divorce have communicated volumes. When Dwayne Martin got engaged to model Ashley Marie Jones, reports emerged that Tisha had issued a private warning to his new fiancée. According to those reports, Tisha specifically warned Ashley to keep Dwayne away from her male friends, and explicitly referenced his background in a way that left little ambiguity about what she was describing. Now consider the significance of that. Tisha Campbell, the woman who spent 20 years defending Dwayne Martin publicly, deflecting rumors publicly, protecting his image publicly, is now privately warning his next partner about the exact thing she spent 2 decades denying. That is not the behavior of a bitter ex making unfounded accusations. That is the behavior of a woman who knows exactly what she lived through and cannot in good conscience watch another woman walk into it uninformed. In 2020, during the fallout from Jada Pinkett Smith's Red Table Talk entanglement confession, Tisha commented on social media, "The truth always comes out. They will lie till the end." She did not name anyone specifically, but she capitalized the word "will" twice in the post. In the context of everything that was happening and everything that had come before, that felt like anything but an accident. After 20 years of being the loudest defender of that inner circle, she was done defending. And then came the lawsuit that added yet another layer to an already complicated picture. Earlier this year, a former violinist named Brian Scott Joseph filed a civil lawsuit against Will Smith. We present everything in this lawsuit as unverified allegations that will be tested through the legal process. Will Smith has not been convicted of anything. These are claims made in a civil filing. With that clearly stated, here is what Joseph alleges. He claims he was hired to work with Will Smith on a major touring project. Initially, the professional relationship appeared normal. Then, according to his account, the dynamic began to shift. He alleges Will Smith began telling him they had a special connection, making these statements in private, one-on-one settings. The incident Joseph describes as most significant involves returning to his Las Vegas hotel room to find a handwritten note. According to his account, the note read, "Brian, I'll be back. Just us," with a drawn heart. It was signed with the name Stone F, which is a known nickname used by Will Smith. Joseph alleges that when he reported this and other incidents to the management team, he was not taken seriously. He was accused of lying, and he was fired.
Earlier this year, I was hired to be a performer on a major tour with somebody who is huge in the industry. So I was excited, proud of myself for getting the opportunity. Unfortunately, some things happened, and I can't get into the details of exactly what that was because it's already a legal issue right now. But the reason why I'm speaking out about this is because getting fired or getting blamed or shamed or threatened or anything like that simply for reporting sexual misconduct or safety threats at work is not okay. And I know that there's a lot of other people out there who have been afraid to speak up, and I understand. And if that's you, I see you, and that's pretty much it.
Again, this is a civil lawsuit. The allegations are unproven. They will be decided through the legal process. What the lawsuit contributes to this story, regardless of its ultimate outcome, is a pattern question. When multiple people, unconnected to each other, across different years and different contexts, describe similar behavior from the same individual, that pattern becomes harder to attribute to coincidence. It demands at minimum a serious, honest examination. Brian Scott Joseph's lawyer has stated publicly that his client is speaking out because he wants other people in similar situations to know that silence is not the only option. Tisha Campbell, 20 years earlier, learned that same lesson the hard way. Let's zoom out and look at the full picture. A woman entered a marriage already psychologically vulnerable, fresh from a career-altering trauma that the industry had responded to by attacking her credibility. She found in that marriage not safety, but a more sophisticated trap. Physical abuse that began almost immediately. Psychological warfare designed specifically to exploit her need for the marriage to succeed. Financial manipulation that quietly stripped everything she had built. And underneath all of it, a set of secrets that required her silence to survive. Court documents confirm the $1.4 million loan from Will Smith. The shell company scheme is on the federal record. The sworn abuse testimony is in the court file. These are not internet rumors. These are documents with legal weight. The unverified allegations, the nature of the Will Smith and Dwayne Martin friendship, brother Bilal's claims, the Brian Scott Joseph lawsuit, we have been precise about their status throughout. They are allegations. They are unproven. They exist in public record because named individuals have made them in public forums. You have them. You assess them. What is not a matter of debate is what happened to Tisha Campbell. She spent 20 years as a gatekeeper for an image that wasn't hers to protect. She endured documented abuse, sworn to under penalty of perjury, to maintain that image. She was financially devastated. Court record confirms it. She was psychologically dismantled. Her own words describe it. And when the federal government finally backed her into a corner where silence would have made her legally complicit in fraud, she told the truth. She became the whistleblower against her own husband. She handed over the evidence. She cooperated with the trustee. She walked away with $21, forgiveness. After all of that, 20 years, $21, 2 decades of physical and psychological abuse, financial ruin constructed specifically to trap her. And Tisha Campbell's response is forgiveness. I want to sit with that for a second. Because that is not weakness. That is someone who has done the work to understand that carrying what was done to her is a heavier burden than releasing it. That is a woman who has decided her life after all of this is going to be hers. We covered a lot today. The Martin Lawrence lawsuit that started everything. The marriage that became a trap. The abuse documented in sworn court testimony. The bankruptcy fraud. The shell company. The hidden assets. The federal investigation. The $1.4 million loan from Will Smith that is in the court record. The pattern Dwayne Martin allegedly replicated in other people's marriages. The unverified allegations about the nature of the friendship at the center of all of this. And the Brian Scott Joseph lawsuit that adds another layer the public is still processing. We were clear throughout about what is verified and what is not. The court record speaks for itself. The allegations are labeled as allegations. You have all the information. What I'll leave you with is this. The entertainment industry is extraordinarily good at protecting its investments. It protected Martin Lawrence in 1996. It protected the image of a Hollywood marriage for 20 years. It will keep protecting people until the cost of protection exceeds the value of what's being protected. For Tisha Campbell, that moment came in a federal bankruptcy proceeding, when the choice was between telling the truth and going down with a fraud she didn't create. She chose the truth. It cost her almost everything, but it gave her the one thing the marriage never did: her freedom. Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time.